Hi friends, welcome back to Sermons for Saplings this week. I hope you enjoyed your Easter, and I'm excited to pick off where we last left off in our Bible stories. Today we're going to talk about obedience, and in the story we're about to hear, our characters had to make a choice. And so we're going to start out by making a few fun choices and play Would You Rather. So you'll see pictures on your screen, and I want you to point to the picture that you would choose. Would you rather be able to fly or be a giant? Go. Would you rather eat ice cream or broccoli? And finally, would you rather clean your room or go play outside? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story. When I was probably around 8 or 9, and my mom had said, okay, if we get a dog, you're going to have to clean up all the hair on the couch. And I was like, sure, of course, I'll do that, Mom. And so we did that. And so, but one day my mom said, okay, Ben, that was my brother, and Liz, that was me. Ben and Liz, you guys need to clean the dog hair off the couch before you go outside and play. And then she went off to do some mom thing. I don't know, like clean up the dishes or something. And Ben and I looked at each other and we were like, we don't want to clean the dog hair off the couch. That's boring. I think we can sneak outside before Mom sees us. And so Ben and I jetted outside, and we were outside playing. I think we were playing catch. And my mom came around the corner of the house and she said, did you clean the dog hair? Did you obey and do what I asked you to do? And Ben and I had to shake our heads. No, we had chosen something much more fun than obeying. And in today's story, we're going to learn about someone who obeyed God even when disobeying God probably would have been more enjoyable and more fun. We're going to talk about how we can obey God even when it's really hard. And so kind of our big question and our big answer is, how can we obey God? And we can obey God because He helps us. He helps us obey. We trust Him to help us obey. That's how we obey God. And that's kind of the point of this story. So, I'm going to kind of rewind a little bit. And remember Ezekiel? I'm going to show you a picture of our lesson. I had all those pictures up here on this whiteboard. And we talked about Ezekiel. And the Israelites in this story, they were in trouble. Remember? Do you remember what they were doing that God needed to punish them for? Take a second and think. Maybe whisper it to your parents. That's right. They were worshiping other gods, and God was unhappy with them. So He decided to give them a consequence, and He sent them away. He sent them away from their homes. There was a king from Babylon, a very powerful king. He came, he knocked down all their buildings, he burned everything, and he took the Israelites away from their home, and they marched all the way to Babylon, and they were stuck there. And so at this point in the story, they're still there. They're not home yet. Even though, do you remember in Ezekiel, and I'm going to show you another picture, that Ezekiel had promised them, or God had promised them through Ezekiel, that God would give them a new king, a shepherd king. And God had also promised the Israelites that He would bring them home one day. So we're not quite there yet. They're still in Babylon, and there's still another king ruling over them. The new king was Nebuchadnezzar. He was kind of an evil king. And so, or he just didn't believe in God. He worshipped other gods. He had all kinds of terrible things going on. So King Nebuchadnezzar, once he got all the Israelites to his kingdom in Babylon, he told his helper, here's the king's helper. He told his helper, I want you to collect the best boys from Israel. I want you to bring them to my palace. I want them to eat my food and drink my drink. They're going to learn about our customs. They're going to learn about our gods. They're going to learn the way we do things. We will turn them into Babylonians, and they will work in our government one day. And the helper said, yes, master. And then he went off to do the king's bidding. So the king's helper, he had collected some of Israel's finest boys. These were boys that were strong and healthy. They were handsome. They had gone to school. He hoped that if he could teach them to be Babylonians, to be like Babylonians, that one day they would be helpers in the Babylonian government. He even gave them new Babylonian names. Now imagine you're captured and then someone collects you and says, okay, you've got a new name. You're not going to be called Ellie Buller anymore. You're not going to be called Gideon Robinson anymore. Your new name is Bazingo. And Bazingo, you can't eat the foods you're used to anymore. You've got to eat this food. And you can't worship your God anymore. You've got to learn about Baal. How would you feel about that? Would you feel good about that? Would you feel not good about that? Yeah, I'd feel pretty bad about that too. And so today, we're going to kind of tell the story of what happened next. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he had his helper pick a bunch of guys, and among them were 4 special men that God was going to use to show that he was ultimately in control. And these men were Daniel, Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego. When Daniel, Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego got to the king's palace along with all the other guys, King Nebuchadnezzar's helper gave them the king's food. All the most wonderful foods in the palace. He wanted these guys to be healthy and strong, so he thought, why not give them the same food that the king eats? It was like a feast. But there was just one problem. A lot of the foods that he was offering to these guys were foods that God did not want them to eat. See, God had made up some rules for what the Israelites could eat, rules that would keep them healthy and safe, and the foods King Nebuchadnezzar was offering them were not on the list. So, some of the boys in the group, they came up to the helper and they said, woohoo! We are so excited to try these new foods, and they dove right in.
Yummy.
Maybe they were excited to take the food because it was new and exciting, or maybe they were scared to disobey King Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know, but they didn't care about obeying God. They just tried this new food, and they thought it was delicious. So let's be like those guys. Can you do that with me? Can you eat your food? Maybe you're getting some ice cream. Maybe you're getting some French fries.
Yum, 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 yum.
But Daniel, Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego, they refused to eat the king's food. And Daniel went up to him and he said to the helper, I don't want to eat your food. It's against God's rules for me to eat your food. Please, please, let us just eat vegetables and water for 10 days. But the helper said, no, 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 no. You're going to get me in trouble. The king wants you to eat his foods. And even Daniel's friends came up and said, dude, you got to try this. It's amazing. We've never had food like this before. Come on, try just a little bit. What do you think Daniel did? Do you think he tried the food? Show me with your arms. Do you think he tried the food or no? I'm going to put Daniel down over here. You're right. No, he did not try the food. He said to the king's helper, give us just vegetables and water for 10 days. After 10 days, if we're not as healthy and strong as the other guys, we'll do it your ways. And the king's helper agreed. And so for the next 10 days, all he gave Daniel, Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego, all he gave them was vegetables and water. Maybe some celery, maybe some broccoli, maybe some eggplant, some tomatoes, and water. Kind of boring, right? But Daniel and his friends, they wanted to eat this way because they wanted to obey God, not because it was necessarily more enjoyable or even more healthy. So let's count to 10 on our fingers. Let's think about how many days 10 days would be like. Ready? Get your fingers out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 long days of just vegetables and water. Do you think this was easy for Daniel and his friends? Do you think it was enjoyable? They were watching their friends eat pork chops and strawberry pie and potato chips while they just ate celery and water. I don't think it was easy. Obeying isn't always easy. Just like it wasn't for my brother and I, we chose not to obey because it wasn't easy to get the dog hair off the couch. And even more importantly, obeying wasn't easy for Jesus. Do you remember last week Miss Megan was talking about how much Jesus suffered? He had his crown of thorns and he was hit and beat up and people spit on him and he died so painfully on a cross. Jesus suffered because he chose to obey, even though it wasn't easy. Daniel and his friends, the way that they were able to obey and do this hard thing is they asked God to help. God, please help us obey you. And God gave them the strength to obey. Just like God will help us obey too, even if it's something hard. Now, after 10 days, we'll get your 10 fingers. Good job. After 10 days, the king's helper examined all the boys. He said, very good, very good, very good, very good. Ugh. And guess what? Daniel and his friends were more healthy, more strong, more advanced than the guys who had eaten the king's food, even though they had just eaten vegetables and water. So, the king's helper agreed to let them keep eating that way. Now, even though Daniel and his friends ended up healthier than the other guys, they weren't eating vegetables just to be healthy. Why were they eating just vegetables and water? Pause the video and talk to your parents. Let's check in and make sure you're tracking with the story. Pause. Okay, good. Exactly. They weren't eating vegetables just to be healthy. They were eating those vegetables because they wanted to obey God in the way that God wanted them to eat. Daniel obeyed God by not eating the king's food. And after this, God continued to help Daniel, Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego. He made them healthy and strong, but he also gave them skills and knowledge that over and over again impressed King Nebuchadnezzar. And over time, King Nebuchadnezzar really was impressed by Daniel and his friends. God did all this to show that he was in control. That even on a diet of vegetables and water, God's men could become strong and healthy and be the best in their group. God was showing he didn't need the king's sumptuous food. He didn't need to do things the king's way or the normal ways. God is not limited by anything because God is in control. Now, let me tell you one more story about me. And this is a story from when I was an adult, so you don't get a kid picture of me this time. Just last week, there was something I wanted to watch on Netflix that I kind of knew God wouldn't be too happy with. It looked really interesting, but it also made things look really cool that I think that God just wouldn't have been pleased with. Like if Jesus was sitting next to me, I kind of would have been embarrassed that he was watching this with me, you know? And so one night last week, I was so tired and I just wanted something entertaining to watch. And I thought, oh, I really want to watch that show. But I stopped and I prayed and I said, God, would you give me the strength to obey you? Would you give me the strength to do something else right now? And you know what? God helped me obey. I shut my computer and I did something else. I was able to do something else and God helped me obey. So guess what? This is your main takeaway. Are you ready? Are you listening? When you want to do something that's disobeying God, stop, pause, and ask God, God, help me to obey. And God will help you obey. We can obey God because he helps us obey. Just like he did for Daniel and his friends, and just like he does for anyone who trusts in Jesus. So when this video is done, I want you to turn to your family and I want you to ask your parents and talk to them about something that's hard for you to obey. Maybe it's really hard for you to clean up when you're asked, or maybe it's really hard for you to share with your brother or sister, or maybe when it's time for bed, you just never want to go to bed and you fight them. I want you to talk about something that's hard for you to obey, and then maybe your parents will share too something that's hard for them to obey God with, and then together as a family, you guys can pray that God will help you. Just like Daniel, shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego. Hope you guys have a great Sunday. I hope you just love Jesus more because he's the one who helps us obey. I miss you guys and hope to see you soon. Mwah.